Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching Startup Central with me, Sumita Karir, and let's put the spotlight then on some deal movements. Well, during the last week, 24 Indian startups raised over $180 million in funding. In fact, these deals include 3 growth stage deals and 19 early stage deals. In fact, India's startup ecosystem after last year's funding winter is surely and slowly picking up pace and is attracting investments. In fact, there were 18 notable hires in that period itself. And to talk more about the deal momentum, the deal movements, investments, and of course pockets of opportunity in the startup ecosystem, I'm now joined by our guest this evening, who's Gopal Jain, the managing partner of Gaja Capital. Thank you very much, Gopal, for joining us this evening on Startup Central. And let's start off by getting a sense of how are you looking at India's overall investment climate right now. We've seen some correction coming in, especially as far as the equity markets are concerned, especially on the back of the China stimulus, which is held as a possible short-term blip. But how do you look at the larger India growth and investment story?
At two levels, India is a very exciting growth story. One is at a very high headline level. India is still the fastest growing large economy in the world. And there is significant visibility for that high level headline macro story. It's also a well-managed economy. So in terms of fiscal management, in terms of monetary policy management. And at a more micro level, there are some very strong, clear secular trends in India that are driving value creation, which make it exciting for investors. Trends like financialization, trends like digitization, just to name a couple of trends. Yes.
Right, Gopal. So that then presents a lot of choices, whether it's tech, EVs, renewables, and of course financials as well. But which sectors specifically look promising to you right now in terms of the kind of sectors that you're investing in currently?
The kind of all-round 360-degree sort of a secular growth story we have, you're spoiled for choices. So it's a question of what are the things that are growing faster than the others. So I would say the most exciting centerpiece of the Indian story is the whole digital tech economy. So while the economy, let's say, does a 2 to 3x over the next 10 years, this part of the economy, the digital tech economy, will do a 10x. It'll grow from approximately 300 billion to 3 trillion. Another huge trend is financialization, right? Which is the financialization of the Indian economy, the financialization of savings in India. Another very important trend is the emergence of discretionary spending and the kind of the new range of consumer companies, the new breed of consumer companies. So far, the consumer companies that we have seen cater to non-discretionary demand, mostly consumer staples. Now we are set for a transformation. Another very exciting trend is the changing nature of Indian businesses. So Indian businesses and enterprises are consuming more and more technology and software. And this has already created a growing cadre of domestic product companies, software product companies. So Indian consumers, started using technology a few years ago. Indian businesses are now playing catch up, and there is increasing use of software by Indian businesses and enterprises to run business and enterprise functions. These are some of the trends that we are focused on.
Right, Gopal. So all of those sectors look very interesting and promising. And we cannot not talk about the IPO market, which is booming and has truly come of age. In fact, some have been outright successes, others not as much. Does the IPO market interest you, and what's your overall view on the developments that we're seeing in the IPO space?
The Indian IPO story is one of the best stories coming out of India and one of the best stories in the world of global finance. So, in the Indian IPO market, you could say, I hate to use that word, is booming. And India led the world in terms of number of IPO transactions. So the number of IPO transactions in India in 2024 are ahead of even the US, whose market cap is close to 10x the Indian market cap. We are ahead of China. In terms of value of transactions, we are behind the US. But you can understand that, right? I mean, it's a much larger economy. It's a much larger market cap. So it's a very strong IPO story, and it's strong enough that many companies that were earlier planning, many years ago, they thought there wasn't a market for them in India. This goes to the point you're making, that there would not be a market for them in India, and therefore were aiming at listing in over, are now flipping backwards to list in India. And because after all, the best place for an Indian story to go public is in India. So as the nature of the Indian economy changes, some of the forces, some of the trends that are described, a new breed of companies will come to the fore. I mean, a great way to understand what is happening is just look at the Sensex, right? The Sensex was made in 1986, and if you compare it to compare the 30 companies in Sensex to the 30 companies in Sensex in 2024, you see how markets transform over a period of time. In 1986, there was no technology services in Sensex. Can you believe it? Today, technology companies like Infosys, etc., play such a major role in the index. There was only one bank in the Sensex in 1986. Today, there are a number of banks and financial services companies. There was no, I mean, of course, there was no telecom company. There was no retail company. So, over a period of time, the profile of the economy changes, the profile of the market changes, and IPOs are the route through which new companies come into the market, just as the old go away. I don't know how old you are, but there used to be a company called Hindustan Motors in the Sensex. And today, there is, I don't know if how many people remember that company. Today, it's Maruti Suzuki, which is in the Sensex. So this churn in the economy, the IPO markets are the gateway through which the new breed of companies join the public markets, and the old order giveth way to the new.
Absolutely. And what a fantastic explanation, Gopal. What a fantastic perspective on India's IPO market. Of course, the new companies, of course, the old order will give way to new companies via the IPO route. But let me also ask you about one of the things that you spoke about, and that's technology being a space of interest to you and, of course, several other investors like yourselves. How are you looking at AI in the country's digital economy from a B2B and B2C perspective?
Well, like AI is an avant-garde phenomenon. Of course, it's going to play a very important role. But let's take a step back to make it a little simpler and more understandable, which is technology. As I mentioned, the Indian digital tech economy, in our view, is going to do a 10x in the next 10 years. So, techization, both at a B2C level and at a B2B level, are very important forces. Today, only 2% of Indian companies are tech companies, 2% of listed companies. In the US, it's close to a third. So that's the sort of a transformation that you will see in financial markets, public markets, IPO markets, which is the increasing role of technology. We talked about Sensex. We talked about how, 35 years ago, there were no technology services companies in the Sensex, and today there are many. But today there are no technology product companies in the Sensex, and I think I would be very surprised 10 years from now if there are no product companies in the Sensex. Will there be AI companies? Well, I think many of the current companies will evolve to take advantage of AI. So take a step back. The techization of the Indian economy is one of the most powerful trends in the Indian economy. It's going to create disproportionate amount of value. That value will be reflected in the composition of public markets. And the gateway to public markets is the IPO markets.
Right. So, Gopal, very interesting points that you've raised about the financialization and its increasing penetration so far as the Indian customer segment is concerned. That is definitely one key trend coming up. And of course, you've spoken about other key trends like the digital tech economy and, of course, the discretionary spending that's only going to increase further. But give us a sense of where India stacks up against the rest of the world in terms of funding. There was a bit of a drought coming in 2023. In fact, this year saw some mega deals as well. But there's been a lot of caution so far as investors are concerned. Has that been your observation as well? And do you see those worries fading away now?
When you talk about funding for Indian businesses, Global funding is no longer the headline story. Just as in public markets, if you look at SIP volume itself, the SIP volume is 3x the average FII volume. Similarly, in private markets, increasingly domestic savings are a source of capital and funding. So, in public markets, the funding that you talk about is dehyphenated from what is happening around the world, and there is no drying up of funding in public markets. The story is very strong. The financialization of savings is taking Indian savings into public markets. In private markets, it has started. I couldn't say that 5 years ago, but it has begun. And the reason for that is that private equity is working in India. The total quantum of exits in private equity last 5 years alone.
All right, so big observation coming, Gopal, that global funding is no longer the headline story for funding in Indian companies. Of course, there is domestic demand as well. On that note, thank you very much, Gopal, for joining us this evening and sharing your thoughts on India's startup and investment landscape. And ladies and gentlemen, that's it from all of us here on Startup Central. Hope you liked the show as much as we did putting it together for you. Goodbye and thanks very much for staying with us.